Hey guys, this is Echo Sours, and you're checking out a mixing tip and trick tutorial video on ADSR. So in this video, we'll be talking about using tape saturation in the mix to improve your mix, to make it sound a little bit more warm, to make it sound warmer, to make it sound a little bit bigger, and to make it sound a little bit more fuller, and even add some nice high frequency content. So we're gonna be focusing on tape saturation primarily in this video. There's different types of saturation out there. Tape saturation is the most common one when you're trying to just add it to an overall mix. So the cool thing is about tape saturation is there's tons of different plugins out there at different price points. I really like FabFilter Saturn. I also like SoundToys Decapitator. I even like Waves Saphira, and then each DAW usually comes with their own saturation type plugin. So a quick crash course on tape saturation. Back in the dinosaur ages when you recorded to reel tape, saturation was just kind of like a thing that happened. Was when you recorded with tape, you would overdub, you'd record, then you may overdub, and you'd then kind of re-record record the effects like the outboard processing, the compressor EQ back onto another generation of tape, and you'd keep going to these different generations of tape. And as that happened, there'd be this kind of nearly imperceptible change in pitch. And I believe there was different like hertz ranges for if you were within this hertz range and this hertz range, it would be called like flutter or it'd be called scrape, etc. So there's a few different types. And a lot of tape saturation plugins now have that. You can add flutter, you can add wow, you can add scrape, that sort of stuff. So I like to use saturation kind of like I like to use compression, and that's in stages. I think it works best in a mix when you're trying to add some warmth and fullness to your mix, to do it in stages. And I like to do it on instrument groups more than on individual instruments, just because I feel like I control a little bit better. So let's listen to this demo real quick. This vocal down here is pretty unmixed. It's something for a Voxa 2, so ignore that, but let's check it out. All right, so there's a lot of saturation on this. Now, it may not sound like it at first listen because there's not tons of like sizzle and crunch, but the saturation is having a nice effect on the overall sound. Let's go through some of these real quick. So on the drum group, I'm using Saphira. Saphira is made by Waves. I believe you can get it for $29, but it is kind of like this weird hybrid saturation plugin. It has certain tape elements. You see down here, you have speed and depth. You can even add new harmonics and edge. So let's listen to this and A/B it. Right, so it's actually making the overall drum group a little bit quieter, but I like the high end. I like the sizzle that it adds to the snare and even the kick to a lesser extent. Now on my top drums, I'm using SoundToys Decapitator. This is like mainly hi-hats, that sort of stuff. Right, so it's a little bit louder, a little bit higher frequency. I have the high cut, the low cut about halfway. I have the tone up on bright. And yeah, just kind of mess around with it. It's a pretty simple plugin to use. So let's listen to the drum group, or the two drum groups, the main drums and the top drums. And then we're going to listen to it with the saturation on and then without. All right, let's move down to the chords now. I love saturating synth chords, synth leads, that sort of stuff. I'm using FabFilter Saturn on this, and you'll notice that the mix, I pulled it up for the demo, but the mix should probably be closer to around 50 to 60%. Like I said, saturating in stages works best, and you don't want to overdo it. Otherwise, you can't saturate in stages. So here it is with Saturn on. And there it was off and on, so we're kind of A-Bing. Now, it's the saturation that I used in this demo is most noticeable, I would say, on the sub and the bass. Let's go down there. And on the sub track here, we have FabFilter Saturn immediately on the actual sub. If we turn that off, so a lot of the high end of the sub, which I know to some of you might sound a little bit weird, but that's how you get a sub to sound good, pop out of the mix without eating up too much headroom, is saturate and add a little bit of high frequency air and content to it. that's coming from the saturation. Now, I also have a bus or an aux send going to Decapitator, and this baby's crushing it. And I have a little bit of LFO tool on that to add some movement. So same thing going on with this bass sound. Adding some saturation via an aux or bus send, and the same one, Decapitator, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different instances of saturation on pretty much every group of instruments in this mix, save for the effects and those sort of sounds, the transition sounds. I even have Decapitator on that vocal. So there's a lot going on in terms of saturation. So to sum up here, saturate in stages first. Second, if you have the option to load up various or different types of tape saturation, I think that can have a cool effect because adds a little bit of variance to the saturation sound that you hear. If not, definitely just change up and tweak in the actual plugin that you're using. And third, try messing around with a combination of actual saturation, tape saturation on a group or a track, and then try some kind of like in a parallel processing environment where, like with this bass down here, we sent some of it to a really pretty oversaturated sound, I would say. And then finally, kind of like a bonus tip and trick here, if you have a tape saturation plugin that gives you wow, that gives you flutter, mess around with those, especially on synth sounds. They can create some nice, subtle movement. All right, guys, if you have any questions or comments, let me know below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm Echo Soundworks. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I will see you next time.